Hello, everyone. Welcome to TechStrong TV. Today is Monday, July 27th. Hope you had a great weekend. It was a great weekend here. I was actually able to get out of the house a little bit. Went on just a boat with family, and it was okay. You say after being cooped up in the house for so long, you kind of savor being able to get out, but you still got to be socially distant. You still got to wear your mask, do your thing, and I hope you are as well, and I hope you're all well and safe. You know the drill here. You've probably seen TechStrong TV before. We have about 2 to 3 hours worth of some really good tech news interviews, in-depth discussions on some issues around DevOps, digital transformation, cloud native, and cybersecurity, a lot of cybersecurity. So stay tuned. I think we've got a great show for you today. Let me tell you actually a little bit of what we've got. First of all, our first guest is Raj Dutt, one of the co-founders and the CEO of Grafana and Grafana Labs. So Grafana is a very successful open source project. It works a lot with Prometheus and some of the other kind of leading open source projects, and it's great for observability, as it's been come to be called. We used to call it, performance monitoring and management and so forth, AI ops. But observability is really becoming a buzzword out there. They've just released Grafana 7.0, and Raj talks to us about that. So that's a good interview. Then after that, I'm really happy to have Tom Jermolik on. Tom is the CEO founder of Beyond Identity. If you're not familiar with Tom, Tom was the president, CEO, COO of Silicon Graphics back in the day. He's a longtime partner of Jim Clark, people behind Netscape and Excite, or maybe it's At Home, one of them. And probably 20 other companies. I mean, Tom and Jim have done amazing things. Their latest is Beyond Identity, and it really tackles a big question, which is, the whole password paradigm in security is just broke, and it doesn't work, and it's a continuing source of problems. And they're looking to fix it. They're going to hit it head on, and these are people with the resources, the experience, and the know-how to maybe really make a difference here. So we're excited by the Beyond Identity mission. Had a chance to catch up with Tom. I thought it was a great conversation. Check it out for yourselves. And then in what is the first of what's going to be a continuing series for us, we have something called CISO Talk. And it's with my co-host, Matt Newfield, CISO at Unisys. And this first one is just Matt and I talking for about 20 minutes on cyber challenges, with COVID. But this will be on every other week. It'll also be a standalone show on Digital Anarchist, and we will have a rotating roundtable or, cast of guests, mostly other CISOs and leaders in the cyber world. So check that out. Very, very excited to bring that to you today. Then from the Something Old collection, we're going back again to TechStrong Con, which took place now almost 2 months ago. And we have Tim Hendricks of Styra, who has a great presentation that he did at TechStrong Con called Security. I'm just going to make sure I don't mess it up here for you. It's Security by Construction, how to weave security into the core of modern applications. Great presentation. I think you'll really like it. And that's, again, Tim Hendricks of Styra. Then I'll be back with the news, headlines, what's going on in our neighborhood here at MediaOps, DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard. And then I have another interview that I did with Vicky Slavin. Vicky is a serial entrepreneur based in Israel. She came to Israel as I think 9 years old from the former Soviet Union and or Russia. And she's had several great companies. Her latest is prodops.io, and it's based here in Miami. They have an office in Tel Aviv, and elsewhere. And they're helping companies through a combination of services, consulting, education, and product to really get their cloud infrastructure solid, their processes solid, to accelerate what they're doing. But Vicky also has a number of other ventures she's involved with. One is sort of an incubator accelerator for immigrants. A really interesting woman. I think you'll enjoy my interview with her. After that, we're going to send things over to Charlene, who has a webinar preview for us for this coming week. It's another great week. I think we've got 6 webinars this week on Media Ops, all on different topics, obviously, from DevOps to security to cloud native. So check that out. And then we'll send things over to Mitchell Ashley, CEO, Accelerated Strategies Group, up on the analyst corner, and we'll take that over there. And then I'll be back to wrap things up. It's just another great Monday here on TechStrong TV. Let's take a break now with a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with our first guest. Our first guest, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is Raj Dutt, CEO, co-founder of Grafana. Grafana is if you haven't heard of them, check them out. They're a real powerhouse in what is being now called the observability space. They have, it's a very, very popular open source tool. And that's been around for years, actually, as has the enterprise version. Raj gives us his background and how Grafana came to be in this great interview. But we also talk about the new Grafana 7.0 and Grafana Enterprise. So let's now go to our interview with Raj Dutt, CEO of Grafana.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another segment here for TechStrong TV. My guest for this segment is Raj Dutt of Grafana. Hey Raj, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hey, thanks Alan. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to join.
It's our pleasure to have you on. So, Raj, I've heard of Grafana, but I don't know if everyone in our audience has. So I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, just starting off by kind of giving us the Grafana background, and maybe you could weave in sort of how your own personal journey into the Grafana story, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely, Alan. So Grafana is an open source data visualization project that our co-founder Torkel Odegaard created in Sweden back in 2014. And since then, it's kind of garnered an incredibly large and diverse community of developers around the world and users around the world. In the 6 years since Grafana's existed, we've now got well over 500,000 companies using the software. So since it's open source, it's freely available. People can just download it and try it out. And the thing that makes Grafana unique is not only does it help you visualize your data in a really beautiful and easy to use way, but it connects to your data wherever it lives. So whether your data is in the cloud or on-prem, or lives in something like a SQL database, or something like even Google Sheets, or DevOps tools like Prometheus, Elasticsearch, Splunk, Datadog, New Relic. There's dozens and dozens and dozens, over 50 different data sources that Grafana connects to. So it's an incredibly popular open source project. It's created by not only our team here at Grafana Labs, but there's contributors all over the world. Over 1,000 developers have contributed code to the Grafana project. And Grafana Labs is the company that was started in 2015 to really accelerate both the Grafana open source project as well as build a commercial business around it. As far as my own story goes, in a previous life, I ran a web hosting cloud computing company called Voxel. And as a result of doing that, myself and my co-founders there, we really kind of got enamored with how quickly the monitoring world was changing. with regards to internet infrastructure, right? So obviously from, people running bare metal servers to VMware to Docker to serverless, infrastructure has just gotten so much more dynamic, so much more distributed. The volumes of data is through the roof. So I was really interested in the monitoring space and was lucky enough to meet up with Torkel back in 2014, just as the Grafana project was getting going. And we decided to start a company together to kind of solve some of the problems that people were seeing in how they monitor their internet infrastructure.
Excellent. And so you're co-founder of Grafana Labs, and your position there is, for our audience?
I'm the CEO of Grafana Labs.
Fantastic. Now, what's interesting is, since from 2014, 2015 until now, 5-6 years later, we see a move towards, let's call it, foundations for open source management. But Grafana Labs still sort of manages the Grafana project.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right.
That's correct. We call ourselves a first party open source company. So it's actually an interesting question, Alan, because Grafana, obviously it's not in a foundation,
Right.
but we do have a pretty open
Community.
both a pretty open community and, more importantly, an open governance model, right? So our governance model is actually modeled after the Prometheus project, which, as you may know, is part of the CNCF Foundation. Yep. And the funny thing is at Grafana Labs, we have what we call a big tent philosophy. And that means that we participate in other ecosystems and projects that are beyond our own software. So for example, not a lot of people know this, but Grafana Labs is one of the main contributors to the Prometheus project. In fact, I
didn't know that.
Yeah, in fact, I think we employ at this point about 25% of the core Prometheus developers. And we're very focused on, making the Prometheus project as awesome as it can be. Even though that's not our project, we try to be sort of good citizens within that open source community. And the reason why we do that is because Prometheus is one of the most popular data sources for the Grafana project. And we even offer on our cloud offering a Prometheus compatible kind of hosting option. There's also another CNCF project called Cortex, which our VP of product, Tom Wilkie, actually started. And that's a really interesting project to us too. And we're, a major contributor towards that project. So there's a bunch of CNCF projects that we're actively involved with. And the fact that Grafana is not in a foundation is kind of ultimately irrelevant, but I think
well, no, the reason I brought it up, and you know what, this is probably a discussion for another interview we'll do, Raj, okay? But the reason I brought it up was the recent announcement with Google with this Open Commons thing, and they're changing the way Istio is being governed. And maybe we're seeing a move back, away from, foundational open source, if you want to call it that. I don't know. But that's not even why I invited you on today, in all honesty. So let's save that. Let's save that for another day. Sure. And we could have a good open source discussion. I had some questions about Grafana and Grafana Labs, though, and that is, and look, we're all now very familiar with these sort of business models. We've seen it with Jenkins and CloudBees and countless other companies, right? And really the line always becomes, well, look, I want my open source project not to be, crippled or cut off. It has to be featured enough where people don't feel obligated that they got to buy the commercial version. But yet my commercial version should have some killer features that people say, man, it's worth spending the money over and above support, right? Because that used to be the trigger of why you would want to go commercial versus the open source project as well. At least you get support, right? But that's not the case anymore. So talk to us about some of the things that are Grafana Labs versus the Grafana project, and I know often, and again, dealing with companies like Grafana is, you guys know when what the trigger points are for people to move from using the open source version to wanting maybe some of the enterprise or premium or whatever you want to call it, the Grafana Labs feature set. And if so, what they are.
Yeah, you're hitting on a fundamental, sort of tension that exists within any open source business, right? And it's tough to get that balance right. And I think at Grafana Labs, we struggle with it every day for sure. Because open source is all about value creation, and the commercial bit side of the house is all about value capture. And you have to really balance those two forces in a way that is good for the community and is also good for the business, because ultimately we want to create sustainable open source projects, right? Because so for us, we have two products. We have a product called Grafana Enterprise, which is a differentiated version of Grafana that's really targeted at the largest companies in the world. And so we don't expect the large majority of Grafana users to even be interested in Grafana Enterprise, because Grafana itself is so useful and it's not crippled at all. But some of the things that Grafana Enterprise offers are things like integrations with some of the proprietary vendors like Splunk, Datadog, New Relic, AppDynamics, ServiceNow, et cetera, right? So we figure that if you want to bring your Splunk data or your Datadog data into Grafana, then you might want to consider being a commercial customer. It's a nice way that we can kind of figure out who within the community is, basically are large companies and have large budgets. So that's one product that we offer, Grafana Enterprise. And then again, that's oriented towards the largest companies in the world. And then the other product that we offer is called Grafana Cloud, which is basically a full stack of cutting edge open source observability software for metrics, logs, and soon traces, with Grafana at the center. And it basically will store, scale, and support and host your entire observability suite.
Wow.
And Grafana Cloud is oriented not just to large companies, but also to sort of call it the mid-market. Yep, everyone. And so Grafana Enterprise normally starts at about $20,000 per year, which kind of makes it not that appealing for very small organizations. But Grafana Cloud starts at $50 a month. So rather than spin up your own Prometheus and your own Grafana and your own Loki, you can come to us and basically say, like, look, I want the cutting edge open source stack, and I trust Grafana Labs as both the creators and the maintainers of all this software to run it for you. And it's totally pay by usage. And we have customers on Grafana Cloud spending $49 a month, and we have customers on Grafana Cloud spending millions of dollars a year. So it really scales as your demands need it, and it can be a very cost competitive option to running it yourself when you look at a TCO basis.
Excellent. This idea of what you just described with Grafana Cloud, putting together the whole stack, or a stack of multiple projects, offering it as an integrated approach, like as an integrated solution set like that, and then you mentioned all of the, I don't know if it's APIs or plugins or what have you, that allow you to plug in all these other data sources as well. I mean, it's such, to me, like no-brainer kind of stuff, right? Like, why would someone even think about it, right? What's to think about? It's such an obvious move. I love to hear. I mean, personally, I love to hear these kinds of stories, because I think that's the way we have to go. That's the way we should be going. That is why we do open source. That is what the cloud is about. This is what the whole SaaS thing is, right?
Yep.
These kinds of solutions are obvious.
Yep.
Maybe they're just obvious in hindsight. I don't know.
I think we've got a pretty different approach, though, Alan, from a lot of other vendors. And what I mean by that is, a lot of different companies in the monitoring and observability space will integrate with different data sources, and they have different plugins and things like that. But at the end of the day, they're database companies, right? Which means that if you want to use their solution or use their features, you have to store your data with them, right? And you have to kind of move your data from wherever it is into their platform. And what these companies end up trying to do is they try to end up owning the customer's
Your
observability
data.
strategy, right? And owning all the data. And we have a completely different approach. Our approach is we say, like, look, you're using Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is great, keep using it. We'll just connect in real time to Elasticsearch through the Elasticsearch APIs whenever you load a dashboard or whenever you run an alert. So with Grafana Cloud and Grafana, it's not about moving the data into our backend. Our whole approach and our stance is our customers should own their own observability strategy, and our customers should continue to use these awesome best of breed vendors that exist within both the open source ecosystem and the commercial ecosystem. So a lot of vendors will come to a customer and say, like, look, we want you to replace what you're using and use us instead, right? And we think that that's backwards because everyone's pitching the same thing. Everyone's pitching a single pane of glass, right? But the single pane of glass being dependent on some huge consolidation effort that's never going to happen is the oldest lie that's told in IT, right? Like
In IT only.
Yeah. Your next gen database that you think you're going to consolidate into is going to become your legacy database by the time your consolidation effort is halfway through. So we think that people really should be in control of their own strategy, and we call this approach the big tent approach, which means we're not the center. We're not the center of the universe. We're not the answer to everything. We're just part of this wider ecosystem, and that's
you plug into it, and that's what's important.
Yep.
Good stuff, Raj. I love it. I love it. Hey, we've only got 2 minutes left here, and we went off down the rabbit hole a little bit about open source. I apologize, and we got off late. But and recent news or anything from Grafana you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, the most exciting thing is we about a month ago we recently released Grafana 7, which is the most monumental release in the project's history. And some of the things that Grafana 7 now does is we have moved beyond just metrics and logs, and we now support traces natively within Grafana. So we've started with 2 very popular open source tracing backends, Jaeger and Zipkin, and you can now bring in that Jaeger and Zipkin data natively into Grafana alongside your metrics and logs. We've also completely revamped this plugin architecture. So we briefly talked about how many different plugins we have and how we've got a vibrant community of developers who are constantly creating new plugins. It's now dramatically easier to create your own plugin, and we're really excited about that. I mean, some of the we've seen some really cool new plugins that people wouldn't have expected. We now have a Strava plugin where you can bring in the data about how much you're running or riding your bike and visualize it. We have a Google Sheets plugin, right, where you might want to bring in some spreadsheet data from Google Sheets. So we're constantly inspired by what the community does, and we want to make it easier to create these plugins.
Very cool. Very cool. Raj, you know what we didn't tell people? Where they can go to get more information on all this great stuff.
Sure. It's grafana.com, and that's spelt with an F. So it's grafana.com. And if you're wondering about the weird spelling, you can blame my co-founder Torkel. He's Swedish, and they spell phone F-O-N-E. So that's
that's where they got it from. Got it. And that is for both the open source project and Grafana Labs.
Absolutely. Yep.
Very cool, man. Hey, Raj, I appreciate you coming on here. I know we got off late and we had to move around lighting and stuff, but it all works out. Come back and visit us and tell us what else is happening.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me, Alan. Take care.
My pleasure. All right, Raj Dut from CEO, co-founder of Grafana here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Okay, time for our next interview. And, our next interview, as I mentioned earlier, was with Tom Jermalik of Beyond Identity. When you're in this interview, I got to tell you, I kind of felt like I was in the presence of internet royalty or tech royalty. Tom was the president COO of Silicon Graphics, where he worked with Jim Clark. He went with Jim when they formed Netscape, which for me really represented the birth of the commercial internet, right? Without Netscape, there would be no internet as we know it today, I really believe. But anyway, Tom was there, and then he followed Jim worked with Jim and helped Jim in many, many other companies that have been, key in developing so much of the internet infrastructure and what we see today. Tom's latest is Beyond Identity, and it really tackles, it had to be something big that was needed to be done to pull Tom in at this point. And this one it's the whole issue around security and passwords, and it's just broken. And Tom and the Beyond Identity team think they could fix it. We could change the paradigm here. So it's a worthy cause, and if anyone can do it, Tom and his team can. Here's my interview with Tom, and you can hear what he has to say.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. Thanks for joining us for another segment. I'm really happy to have someone, in my world, pretty well known in the security space, Tom Jermalik of Beyond Identity, joining us. Hey Tom, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you coming on. We were talking a little bit off camera. You were down here where we are in South Florida, and you guys hightailed it up a bit to Montana up there, and hopefully staying safe and out of the epicenter as it's become here in South Florida.
Trying to stay one step ahead.
That's all we can do, Tom. I'm glad to hear it. So Tom, I wanted to invite you on today, but I think the first thing we should do is, I don't know if our audience is all familiar with Beyond Identity and what the company does, and I don't know, they probably don't know your whole background, right? So why don't we give them a little background to start off with?
Sure. I'm a long-term technology executive. Started with Bell Laboratories and research, and then met Jim Clark, who was at Stanford at the time, and he started Silicon Graphics, which I joined early on and was there for a long time. Ended up being the president, COO of that company as we got to be quite large. Then went on to do, together we were in Netscape, At Home Network, Shutterfly, my CFO. I was a general partner with Kleiner Perkins as a VC for a number of years. So he and I have been together for 35 years, if you can believe that, in the technology business.
Wow, it's a lifetime. It's pretty much my whole career, by the way.
It's been a long
35
time.
years. Yeah,
Great partnership. He's a incredibly bright, quick, serial entrepreneur with all the good connotations of that, the impatience, the drive, the passion, if you will. So a lot of fun working with him. We came up with the idea for this company out of some work we were doing in the home and business automation and Internet of Things world. And we came up with this idea, and as we researched it, I realized it was such a big idea, a big opportunity, that if I was ever going to do one last one in my career, this would be it. I had been a little bit semi-retired doing board duty, but not running them myself. And I stepped back out of that full-time into this. Glad I have. We got a great group of folks we've hired, putting together to go after this new idea.
So, so folks listening in at home, I mean, the names, the Silicon Graphics and the Netscapes and the At Homes and so forth. I mean, they've had such a. I've interacted with them on so many levels. I don't know, Tom, people in the audience, I don't know if they remember the Silicon Graphic workstations that kind of invented the whole CGI industry and all of that, right? But in any event, the idea for Beyond Identity, though, is a big idea, right? It's the kind of game-changing kind of stuff that we have been within the security industry asking for or thinking about or talking about for years, which is the whole idea of identity, passwords, federation. Some people now call it IAM, right? Identity and access management. At a high level, if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience, what is exactly Beyond Identity? What's the problem they're solving there, or you would like to solve?
Exactly. So when we first started all this at Netscape, we needed a mechanism to be able to have websites communicate with each other securely, so that if you logged into Amazon and bought something, it could talk to Visa or PayPal, securely. And we had Tahir El Gamal, who was working for Jim at Netscape then, and is now
I knew Tahir.
Pardon me?
I knew Tahir.
Tahir's a great guy, won
Yes.
the Marconi Award for this invention of creating SSL as a secure protocol, and of course, the X509 certificate chain. All that has been proven over 25 years, moving trillions of dollars around every day on the web, very securely. And what we were able to figure out is how to make that last step work. How do you take that technology that works so well in the backbone of the web and extend it out to the endpoint, letting the user on their computer, on their phone, on their tablet, participate in that complete chain of trust, if you will, that allows them to be a peer and fully secure. And that really, if you follow the zero trust methodology of trying to move that boundary out instead of being inside the infrastructure of the company, you're moving that zero trust boundary all the way out to the user. It's a really big step towards sovereign identity, towards you being able to represent properly who you are at that endpoint and not having that centralized attack surface that exists today, where those servers have hundreds of millions of passwords on them. So you see Yahoo get hacked or Target get hacked, and the next thing you know, they take those and they credential stuff and they phish and they attack every different website that you've been on. So our system completely gets rid of that centralized server, all those targets, moves it out in a decentralized fashion out to the endpoints, but importantly does it using the same technology that exists today for all these website-to-website communications.
Yep, and that's that's a great way, I think, of explaining it, is that we're taking that back end, SSL technology and putting it on the edge and on the front end, right, or on the endpoints, if you will. And it's been a long. Tom, why did it take this long? I mean, in all honesty, I'm not blaming anyone, but why did it take this long, you think?
We blame ourselves a bit, but at the time, certificate authority management was a complicated thing. In fact, it's still not that easy, but companies don't like running their own certificate authorities. So I don't blame them, and it's we had to punt. It was really the only way we could do it back then, was the whole password sort of approach. But now every machine that you buy, your phone, your desktop, your laptop computer, they all have a secure enclave within them, a TPM, HSM as they're called, where you can store that private key and nobody can get at it. The network can't access it, other applications that can't access it. So you have the same thing as an RSA token that we used to carry, years ago, but now you can embed it in your computers and have those be uniquely verifiable, secure devices. Those tokens never leave the computer. They're never exposed to the network. We ourselves don't see them. The user doesn't see them. So it's not hackable from that standpoint of being exposed. And it really took that technology coming along to make this all be the foolproof security that you need. So a bit of it was hardware technology. So it was just the insight and knowing, we actually run on your computer, even on your phone, a full certificate authority. You don't even know it. You don't have to know it. You don't have to know anything about it. But we've gotten it to the point now where certificate authorities are easy. They've been miniaturized. They're micro-sized. We put it on your phone and it runs and it manages. You sign your own root certificate. You store your own private key, and nobody else, including us, is a part of that conversation, which is our saying is only trust yourself. You don't have to trust us. We don't have any of the information. So it's safe from us and it's safe from hackers.
Excellent. You know, it's a little bit of you can't make wine before it's time either, right? You had the technology had to come up. People's sort of outlook and the way they interact with technology had to mature as well. Tom, one of the issues we see, and I've spoken to several companies in the certificate authority space and certificates, is it's not even just people and their phones and/or computing devices. It's the billions, if not trillions, of other digital